Fantastic. There we go. So we're recording now. And just as a brief, I'm Brandon Bruce, co-founder of Uncat, Nick Wong over at Rillion. So we're going to show you how Rillion does AP automation on the accounts payable side and how Uncat handles fixing uncategorized transactions. Just as a quick introduction, Nick, do you want to give a quick introduction to Rillion, and then I'll do the same for Uncat and we'll show our apps?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Nicholas Wong. I'm a director of solutions consulting in the US here at Rillion. We are a AP automation company, and simply put, it means that we make things easier for you to approve and pay your vendor invoices. And that's what we're going to show you today, is how we can simplify that task, remove a bunch of the manual entry that you're currently doing today, and make the approvals more streamlined.
Nice, awesome. And remind me, Nick, where are you based?
I'm based out of Seattle.
Okay, cool. And is the whole Rillion team there? Because I think you guys have folks all over the country.
Yeah, so we're all over the country. We were initially founded in Sweden, so we're a 29-year-old company, but still relatively new to the US. Admittedly, we've been here for about 8 years, but really only made a giant push in the US over the past year. And so as a result, we're all sort of spread around.
Fantastic. And I think we first forged the connection between Rillion and Uncat as a result of QuickBooks Connect and some of the outreach back and forth following that conference. So anyway, thrilled to spend time with you all, get to see your platform in living color, show obviously everyone here and everyone that watches it afterwards what you all can do, and show them a little bit about Uncat. I know some of you on the webinar already use Uncat, so you're familiar with it. We'll show you a few bells and whistles just in case, and obviously if you have questions as you go, type them into the chat. But I'm Brandon Bruce. I'm based in Knoxville, Tennessee. I always like to share this random story so you've got something to take with you after the webinar to share around the dinner table this evening. About 6 months ago, I was riding my bicycle, as I love to do, coming down a mountain pretty fast, and came around a turn and did something very classically East Tennessee, which is that I ran smack dab into a giant black bear. And so now you know a guy who hit a bear on a bike. So I broke my leg and my foot. The bear, I think, just walked away, because bears are huge and very strong. So it was fine. I was a little bit worse for wear, but thankfully by the time QuickBooks Connect came around, I was back on 2 feet again and was able to connect with the Rillion team. So cool. I know you're all here to see some apps. Let me show you around a few minutes of Uncat, and then I'm going to turn it over to Nicholas, and he'll give you the full tour of Rillion. And it goes without saying, but post any questions as we go in the chat. That way we can make sure that we give you the information that you came here to see. Let me do a screen share, and I will give you the quick tour. So on the Uncat side, Uncat is short for uncategorized transactions. That's what we specialize in. So a couple years ago, my co-founder, Adam Slack, and I had lunch, and he was describing how his firm, Two Roads, was having to send out 350 spreadsheets of uncategorized transactions a month to his clients. And what he said was, there's got to be a better way. Can we build an app for that? And so that's what Uncat is. In a nutshell, we sync uncategorized transactions from QuickBooks Online, QuickBooks Desktop, Xero into Uncat. We automatically notify your clients when you need responses back from them. We gather those responses in Uncat. Then you can come in and categorize the transactions. You can optionally assign classes, customers, vendors, etc. And then you can save all your entries back into QuickBooks. So now you're done and you can close the books, right? You can do month-end close, year-end close, or since we're March 1st, you get ready for tax season. So this is our homepage. This is where the journey starts. You can see we like to have fun. So this is our image of herding cats. I was actually looking for an image of a person herding a bunch of cats, but we found this one of a cat doing the herding, and we thought it was ironic and kind of fun. Uncat, the logo is our homage to like the FedEx logo and other similar logos. If you take the U and turn it 90 degrees, it turns into a question mark. And that's because these are transactions that we just don't know exactly where we should put them in terms of the chart of accounts. And so we want to ask the client for some clarifying information. To give you a sense of the types of transactions that we commonly see, last year, we helped our accountant and bookkeeper customers and their clients categorize about 175,000 transactions worth almost $500 million. So it's a obviously non-trivial issue across lots of firms and lots of businesses. We see a tremendous number of uncategorized expenses from Amazon, Costco, Target, Walmart, Home Depot, Lowe's, et cetera, places where you can buy lots of different things. So it frequently helps to get information back from clients. We also see a lot of uncategorized deposits from sources like Venmo and PayPal and Stripe and Square and Cash App, and of course, good old-fashioned cash. So that's what we're seeing flowing through the system. Obviously, every client is different. And so depending on the industry and the volume that your client has, you may see lots of different types of transactions. Could be a lot of restaurants, could be a lot of travel. We see it all flow through the platform. So from here, if you click start a free trial, it's super easy, no credit card required. If you're not already using Uncat and you like what you see today, just jump in. It goes for 2 weeks. You can invite and test it with as many clients as you want. You'll simply set up an account with Uncat, connect it. In this case, I'll use QuickBooks as the example. Connect to QuickBooks. You'll choose the first client that you want to connect, and then you'll put in their email address, and they'll get an email that says, hey, your accounting professional needs information back on a certain number of transactions worth a certain amount of money, and click here to go straight to your dashboard. And I always start with that because it's a super important piece of what we do. We want it to be really, really simple for your clients. So the client doesn't have to create an account, doesn't have to set a password, doesn't have to download an app. All they have to do is click the magic link in that notification email, and it's going to take them straight in to their dashboard, which by default will look something like this, right? So it's pretty similar to the email or the spreadsheet they might be receiving already, but it's going to have a list of transactions, and we're inviting the client to provide a description. Please tell us what this transaction is so that we can properly categorize it inside QuickBooks. So here they can type a description. Optionally, if they have one, they can upload an attachment. Typically for expenses, that's a receipt. For deposits, it might be a PO or a work order or something like that. So if they have one, they can upload it here. If you have a question for them or they have a question for you, they can tap it out in messages. That way you can kind of get to clarity around a transaction back and forth with your clients. Once they enter a description, optionally an attachment, they'll click save or save all updates at the bottom if they've updated the whole sheet. And then it's going to do a few things. It'll sync into QuickBooks. So the description goes to the description on the transaction, the receipt goes to the attachments. It's going to show up on your Uncat dashboard so that you can review it, and I'll show you that in a second. And we're also going to send you a daily digest notification across all your clients. So it might say, dear Brandon, you have 7 clients that have updated 54 transactions. Go to your dashboard to review them. And so when I do that, I can click and I can show you this is the same client. This is Acme. And here's a host of transactions they have updated. So we label them client updated and highlight them. That way you know they've provided a description. Based on that, you can then come through here and choose the right account from the chart of accounts for this client. And like I said before, you can also assign a class. You can assign a vendor if necessary, or even create a vendor here, and it will create it in QuickBooks. You can expand a transaction and choose a customer, a location, apply tax, etc. If you want to select a particular transaction, you can come up here and split it. You can split by account or by class. You can also select multiple transactions and apply a bulk rule. So for example, I want to apply the same vendor or the same class or the same location to multiple transactions at the same time. Once you do categorize the transaction and you click save, it's going to sync into QuickBooks. It'll disappear then from your dashboard because now you've completed it. It's not uncategorized anymore. So you can kind of work your way through this dashboard for this client. You can see these are the ones that we're still waiting on the client to provide a response for. And then you can scroll down and see additional clients, right? So here's some additional test clients that we have loaded into our demo platform. So you can see multiple clients on the same page. You don't have to have 20 clients open in 20 different tabs. They're all here in Uncat. If you've got hundreds of clients, as some of our customers do, you can easily type ahead to go to a particular customer or just jump to them here in the list. You can also sort the dashboard by amount or account or date just by clicking on a column header, and you can search transactions. So if you just wanted to take care of all the Amazon transactions first, because that's top of mind, then you can come in here, categorize, click save, and sync it in. All right, so that's a kind of a quick tour of the Uncat dashboard. How did these transactions get here? How does the client get notified? That's all controlled in client settings. So you can customize Uncat for every client. Here, you're going to select which accounts you want us to sync. So by default, we will look for accounts like uncategorized expense, income asset, ask my accountant, suspense. But if you have other accounts that you want us to sync in addition or instead, you can choose them here from this client's chart of accounts. You can also select the sync start date. So by default, Uncat will sync back 3 months. If you want to go back further than that, you can choose a date back further in time. So for example, if you're doing a cleanup, which is really popular with Uncat, and we see a lot of that happening right now for 2022, new client comes in, you got to get ready for taxes with them. you want to clean up the books going all the way back to January 1st, you can do that here. Here are the client notification settings. So by default, we send a notification weekly to clients. That tends to work really well because it's recent enough in time that they can actually remember what the transaction was and provide a little clarity for you. We tend to find monthly typically is a little bit too long, because if they traveled at the beginning of a month, you notify them at the end of the month. It might have been 30 days since the trip. They might have forgotten exactly what they purchased and why they did on the trip. So we like a weekly cadence. Monthly, though, is still an option. Daily is an option if you've got a super high volume client like in the e-commerce industry. You might want them to kind of take care of this business daily so they don't get too far behind. We only notify your client if they have transactions that need their attention. If their dashboard's empty, we're going to leave them alone. These are the client dashboard settings. You saw the default configuration where the description is updatable and required. Meanwhile, the receipt was optional. You can always toggle this master switch at the top, and it gives you total control over what the client should see and be able to do. So now, for example, this client, we are allowing them to categorize the transactions. We're allowing them to assign classes to transactions. And not only are we allowing them, we're requiring them to choose a category and a class. So again, totally optional. Depending on the capabilities of your client, you can assign them more or less work to do in their dashboard. If they do categorize transactions, you're going to be able to review their choices on your dashboard. So if they've made a mistake and you want to override their selection in QuickBooks, you can change the category there and then sync it. If they've made the right choice, which they frequently do, then you can simply approve their selection and click save, and it'll disappear from your dashboard. These are your client users for this particular client. So here's kind of the client admin user that can see all the transactions. Meanwhile, these are two examples of client users where we've assigned them particular transactions. So this user at the bottom is only going to see expenses that are uncategorized that originated on their credit card. So you can assign payment accounts to particular users. Similarly, this user is only going to see uncategorized income transactions. Maybe they're the accounts receivable manager. That's all they should see. Expenses are going to be handled by somebody else. All right, and then overall settings, super, super easy. This is going to show you a list of the clients you connected to Uncat. This will show you a list of your colleagues. So in your practice or firm, you can invite your colleagues. You can assign them to only see particular clients in their dashboard. There's also 3 different permission levels depending on what you want them to be able to do. Firm admin can do everything. Client admin can update client settings and invite clients. A team member can update transactions in the dashboard, but they're not going to touch the settings. And then last but certainly not least, because this is a very popular feature, you can change the color of Uncat. You can upload your logo and you can put in the name of your firm. That way, when your clients show up, they're going to see your name at the top. They're going to see your logo, your brand, and your brand colors. That way it reflects you. So when they come here, they're happy with the app. It's a nice reflection on your firm. Lastly, billing, super easy. It's just $5 a month per client that you connect to Uncat. So unlimited transactions, unlimited client users, unlimited firm colleagues. You can just use the platform totally and completely, and it's just $5 a month per client. So super easy. I will pause there. It's a quick demo. It's an easy app to use. We want it to be that way. We want this to save you time. We don't want you to have to get a master's degree in uncategorized transactions. We just want you to come in here and get it set up. Only takes probably a few minutes. And then once you're up and going, it will automatically notify your clients every time you need information back from them, send them notifications and get them back. Quick pro tip, in addition to the magic link, which helps a lot to get clients engaged in using the app, if you have clients that aren't necessarily checking their email often or at all, under client users, you can also put in a client phone number. And that way we'll text message a notification to the client, and that tends to cut through the clutter, right? It won't get lost in the inbox. They're going to see that text message, then click the magic link, and it'll open up Uncat in Safari on an iPhone or Chrome on an Android device. And we see a lot of traffic from clients, as you can imagine, updating transactions, uploading receipts from their camera roll directly from their phone. It's more convenient that way. They don't have to go back to the home office. They can be in the business, running a restaurant, running a manufacturing floor, and still make their updates for Uncategorized and sync them through. So cool. I'll pause there. Let me see if there's any questions at all, and I'm happy to answer them. Let's see. I don't think so far. So if anyone has any questions about Uncat, if you think of any now or certainly later, definitely throw them in the chat. I will also put my email in here. So if anyone has anything that they need, give me a shout. It's brandon@uncat.com. And I will stop presenting so I can hand it over to Nicholas, and let's check out Rillion for AP automation.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Brandon. Let me pull up my screen here. My first time using Google Meetings as presented.
Nice.
So
I'm gonna break the ice.
there we go. Yeah, my co-post counseling is actually Google's Meet, so I'm a little familiar with it.
Nice.
All
there we go. I see it.
Okay, excellent. So to avoid it, infinity mirror. Okay. All right, cool. So, as I said, we're 29 years old. Mostly, founded out in Sweden, so very strong presence in the European, Scandinavian market, but we are growing rapidly here within the US. You can see 3,500 customers worldwide, so we do have a very large presence overall and are able to handle high volumes from our clients, regardless of the size of your business. The other thing that we want to mention is the client retention. 96%, obviously incredibly high. One of the things that drew me from my previous company, which did something similar, but not as good, to Rillion, and why I'm really proud to be working here. We'll jump into things with a little bit of kind of why we exist. And as I mentioned at the top of our call, we're here to simplify your vendor invoice process. So we're going to run you through the scenario of a manual invoice process and why that's just so painful and so costly to companies. You have somebody like Anna, your AP specialist, whose core jobs are to pay off vendor invoices, get them entered into the ERP, to negotiate discounts with vendors, maybe at the very least better payment terms, and also to analyze reporting, identify areas of excess spend. But in a manual-based process, she's so busy chasing paper, chasing email, manually typing things in, manually scheduling payments, that she really doesn't have time to do the bottom two tasks. And that's a problem because it's the bottom two that are going to drive profitability back into her company. By just getting vendor bills paid and entered, she's really just helping them tread water. What's more is that Anna's company, like many of yours, is growing. And so naturally, we all know CFO says, hey, we're growing. It's exciting time. We're going to add more sales, more marketing. But AP staff, I'm not going to be adding any headcount there. So Anna knows that things are about to get even busier for her. And the reason why things are so busy is you have invoices coming in via mail and email. Not so much fax nowadays, but all coming into Anna in a centralized process. And at the very minimum, she still needs to get them paid, get them entered. But that means manually scheduling payments one by one. It means hand keying data in to QuickBooks. It means manual archiving of invoices, whether it's a filing cabinet that's not as organized as it should be, or maybe she's scanning invoices in, which the scanning itself is quick, but the time it takes to then categorize the invoices so that they're somewhat searchable later on. And this is time consuming enough without anybody else involved. Now you take the likely scenario where you have to get at least one approval, typically the person who made that purchase. So the buyer, or you might call them the requester, the invoice reviewer. But because those are sitting out in emails or on people's desks, it makes it very hard for our AP specialists to answer the questions of who has which invoice and how old are they and what's our cash flow looking like? How much money do we have sitting out there in unapproved invoices? But eventually they'll all get them turned into Anna, hopefully on time. But then again, it's manual payments, manual data entry, and manual archiving. And then you have, of course, times where you have a manager approval. You have invoices split across multiple departments. You have department managers involved. You have directors involved, possibly. Maybe even the CFO gets involved. And invoices get declined all the time for one reason or another, and they get sent back. And now you have this tangled web of paper and email floating all over your company for all of your vendor bills. And again, so hard to answer these questions, not just for the AP specialist, but for her boss, the accounting manager, even the controller would have a hard time reporting these figures. And in a decentralized process, it's even worse because invoices are going directly to the buyer. So especially for those of you who have multiple locations, who's missing from this chart? It's AP, and they might not even know that the invoice exists since it's going directly to the person who made those purchases in a decentralized process, making it all the more difficult to answer those questions of who has which invoice, what's the aging status, and what's our cash flow looking like. So enter Rillion, who's here to help streamline that process. And we have two products. The one we're going to focus on today is called Rillion One. It's really designed around the QuickBooks client who has typically majority of their invoices are non-PO invoices. It's a very simple user interface. It's something that can get you up and running in just a matter of minutes for the initial integration. And then in a couple of hours, you could be fully good to go and having invoices processed through your system. We do feature purchase order matching in this particular version of Rillion. However, it's really just designed around the header level for the matching and not necessarily the line item level. For companies who have more complex needs, we do have what we call Rillion Prime, which does have OCR extracting at the line item level for companies who are doing purchase orders at the line item level. This would be very good to facilitate that matching. Now, when you look at AP automation, really there's three core components to it. Of course, you're digitizing the invoice, utilizing optical character recognition to extract information off of it. You then have the review portion where you're going to pass an invoice amongst people within your company to gain the necessary approvals with which to then pay it. And of course, integrating this data back into your ERP. For many of you, it would be QuickBooks. As far as getting your invoices into Rillion, you'll utilize an email address dedicated for your account, so you can give that to your vendors to send invoices directly to your system. You could also forward invoices on one by one yourself. But as they get in, they'll get automatically read by the software, and it'll do its best to extract information from the header level and pre-fill out some information. And so you can see here, things like the supplier, the total amounts are all being extracted. When we look at a more detailed view of what that would look like, here you can see specifically the points of the invoice that are being represented within the Rillion software. And naturally, that's what's going to ultimately push into QuickBooks. So you have your supplier name, your invoice numbers, your invoice dates, your totals and tax there as well. Now, when it comes to the coding, down here, this portion can be done by an AP specialist or by perhaps one of your buyers or an invoice reviewer. And what's nice about Rillion compared to other softwares is that we're able to not only default GLs at the vendor level, we can also automatically perform distributions for you based off of a wide range criteria. So the coding that you're seeing here was actually automatically applied by the software. And then you can see here is a peek into the settings with which you would build out that automatic distribution, whether it be just on your GLs or maybe one of your locations or classes that you're utilizing within QuickBooks. It can also default the workflow as well, whether it's one or many individuals. And then here we can see the criteria that you can set for which this template would then be applied. And so now that we have some of the baseline knowledge of what we're here to do in extracting information, let's jump into the live site and I'll give you a little bit of a tour. Now, we're looking at this through the perspective of the accounts payable specialist, and you can see them right there at the top right. This, of course, is cosmetic purposes. On your real site, you wouldn't see that. And when you look down here, you have different buckets for your invoices. So the work in progress would be invoices that have been sent into the capture, but still need to have some work done on them prior to moving over into your approval workflow. So something like an unknown supplier would be maybe the first couple of times that the system has seen an invoice from that vendor. It has yet to really learn where all the data points are. It's also flagging potential duplicates before it hits the workflow as well. Now, when invoices come into the system, if they're read properly, you could tell the system that you don't even need to do a double check on the OCR. Instead, just send it directly into your approval workflow, into this bucket here. And so we're seeing ones that were rejected by people from the workflow, ones that were sent out. And when we click onto that, we can see those invoices in question and who they're currently sitting with. And then the last bucket would then be the ones that were approved. So we can differentiate between ones that were just fully approved without really any touches on it, or ones that were approved, but maybe somebody in the workflow made a change to the coding, at which point you're now being made aware of it, as opposed to a different system that might not let you know that anything was changed and you might just approve it, not knowing that information. And with that, we'll log out of our AP specialist and show you what it looks like from that buyer's perspective who has the invoice pending their approval. So we're now going to switch here. So the buyer logs in, as you can see the invoice review up here at the top. They have a much simpler view of things. They'll see that they have 2 invoices to approve. So they'll click onto one of them, and we'll take a look at the Geek Crew up at the top. And as we showed you in the slides, the data has already been extracted for the individual. They don't have to worry about entering that information. The coding has been automatically done, but here we can make changes as needed, whether you need to add additional information or maybe change one of the GLs. This is, of course, syncing back to all of your lists within QuickBooks. So simply clicking on the spacebar would give you the full list, or if you were to type in partially the number, that would just show up that finite list. Same thing with your GLs here. Click on the spacebar to see your full chart of accounts. Other things that are available on the screen, of course, you can add in notes, any comments. You could add on additional attachments, maybe supplementing your approval. You also have the ability to email from Rillion. So maybe you need to have communication with your vendor, send an invoice directly from here. Make sure to copy yourself, as this is going to come from a do not reply email. You can also include the invoice image along with this email for easier communication. And you also have the ability to send messages internally within Rillion. They'll click on approve down at the bottom right. Oh, missing mandatory. Oh, right, because we took out that GL. Let's put that back in. And we're good to go. We'll then log out of, say, our buyer, and then show you from the manager's perspective, which is really going to be essentially the same thing, where they have here 1 invoice to approve. We can see here that same invoice, the coding that was done. We can maybe look at the invoice log to see a timestamp of all the actions that took place. And with everything looking good, they'll click on OK as well. Before we jump into some of the report, I do want to point out that these individuals do have the ability to make approvals on a mobile device as well. So while we do not have an actual app, we actually are making use of your browser within your mobile device. And in some ways, we think that it's better in that you also have the ability to perform coding on the on your mobile device. So if you needed to add line items or do distributions or coding allocations, that can all be done, versus some other companies whose apps only let you really approve or decline an invoice. And then from there, I do want to highlight that, as I mentioned briefly, we can help you with purchase orders. In this, though, it's really more designed to centralize your process and keep everything in one place. It allows you to see all of your PO data and then compare that against the line items of the invoice and bring that on over into Rillion. All right, so let's wrap things up with some reporting. We'll sign out here and log back in as our AP specialist. First off, the invoice search. This is what pretty much every AP automation company is going to have. You have to be able to look up your archived invoices. But unlike others where you might only see some major search criteria like vendor name, approval status, payment status, check number, anything further, maybe like your classes or your GLs, you'd have to build a custom query, which would involve if-then statements. We choose instead to just make all of your fields searchable right off the bat. So whether you're looking things up by a particular supplier, looking things up by a particular GL, or looking things up by a particular class, all of that's going to be right here at your fingertips without having to do any sort of complicated query creation. The status down here at the bottom allows you to quickly filter between ones that are just still in the system versus the ones that have been fully approved and fully booked within your ERP. The flags here are, you can kind of think of them like digital post-it notes, where you can custom name whatever you want these flags to be, and you can have several of them. And and tag invoices with one or more of these flags. And it's a way to make them searchable without affecting any of the coding. You also have a advanced search for more complex ways to look things up. But bottom line is that we make it very easy for you to narrow down your selection of invoices. And then from there, as you would expect, the results, here's all the invoices, and we can quickly jump into any one of them as needed to view more of the details. Within the reports, naturally, you're going to still be utilizing QuickBooks as your major source of truth for your reporting. That you have other things like your T&E expenses, your payroll expenses, but this will still allow you to gain some insights into your invoices as they're going through the workflow. Things like the status per different user, being able to quickly see at a glance who still has invoices outstanding, what bucket are they sitting in. Other things like transactions per class, being able to quickly filter out certain classes to view those transactions. And then other things like maybe transactions per supplier, whether you want to see all suppliers or maybe specific suppliers, and then run that report and quickly being able to see any of those invoices. Just adjust our parameters. And then here's the report, and you don't have to go to the search to find an invoice. You can just go directly to that particular invoice from the report itself. And so with that, when it comes to integration, we are an Intuit partner, so we make things nice and simple for you. With QuickBooks Online, here's the data points that you can expect to move forward. Pretty standard stuff, things like your vendor master list, your GLs, your tax codes, class list, customer list, billable or not transactions. Your paid status can also filter back from QuickBooks into Rillion. And then coming out of our system would be your approved invoices going in as unpaid vendor bills. We do have the ability to support the actual invoice image going into QuickBooks. I know a lot of companies with QuickBooks Online, they're only able to give you a hyperlink to the invoice. Not so with Rillion, we can give you the physical image to reside there. And in QuickBooks Desktop, we do have an integration for that as well. Major differences, though, just the limitations of QuickBooks Desktop. It is going to be a hyperlink to the invoice image. It's not going to be the actual invoice image as we were discussing previously with the QuickBooks Online option. And then for those of you who do want assistance with your vendor bills, we do have that option, whether it's via virtual card, so those one-time use credit card numbers, ACH transfers. We can also write checks out on your behalf. Also, you're not having to do that. And we would give you a portal to make it very easy for you to manage those payments as well. Obviously, they can be automatically scheduled on your behalf. But if you wanted to see more insights into how you're paying your vendors off, how much you're spending with each of them, this would be your ability to do so. Also being able to change up timings. Maybe you have one-off scenarios where payments need to be held. And that's Rillion. Again, this is our Rillion 1 module designed to be quick, simple, easy to use. But for people who maybe have more complex needs, we do have a separate system that we call Rillion Prime that we would be happy to demo with any of you on a one-by-one basis.
Awesome. Thanks, Nicholas. Hey, any questions from anybody as you did the whirlwind tour of Uncat and Rillion? Right, that's the high level. These are the capabilities of both pieces of software, and hopefully they can be useful to you for automating AP and also fixing some uncategorized transactions. And good timing. You can do it now to save some time and build some efficiency during tax season, or certainly it is a busy season. We get it. So if you want to revisit these here in 6 weeks, once you hit the deadline for all your clients, we're here for you. Any questions at all, type them into the chat. Nicholas and I are here to answer those. I can answer one of the questions that may be on your mind, which is that we had promoted this along with a giveaway to one lucky attendee of an Amazon gift card. So I ran the random number generator here in the browser. Thank you, Google. And so our lucky winner is Ravina Matani. So congratulations, Ravina. I will send you an email with that gift card in it. Something to look forward to on a Wednesday. if there are no questions, you've got my email in the chat. Nicholas, do you want to put your email in there too, in case anybody wants to follow up? Obviously, both of us will send our respective emails from Rillion and Uncat just to say thank you for attending the webinar. So we'll put some contact information in there. But if you need to reach out to either company, definitely give us a shout.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Brandon, for hosting.
Super. Yeah, of course. Great to see you, Nicholas. We'll do it again. And thanks, everybody, for coming. Have a great Wednesday.
Bye.
Cheers.